Trust me, if I knew, I wouldn't remember. My dad's the first person to introduce me to international calling cards. I hated getting them from the bodega, so I made my mom do it. She wouldn't, so I never called. I didn't call back.
My dad is always the first and last person to FaceTime me. He introduced me to FaceTime. I don't like using it, especially with him. He's always trying to direct my art and warn me about the weather.
Now I forget to eat. I forget lots of things, so don't take it personally when I don't remember how we met. Here, want some clementine? I'm always up for sharing my food. It's so I never have to consume myself.
I left home at 16 and moved back home to Denmark. I may never let you come close. I'm too good at letting you get close. You're already inside. Permission taken. I forget.
There was this kid named Wesley. Definitely a man boy. A family friend who was the son of my grandma's best friend. My grandma didn't like him with me and was scared he'd be a bad influence. He chose music over college. He always was. He told me I'd get raped in a Facebook message the week that it happened. A prediction that came true. He did have mystic powers that allowed him to predict future misfortunes. Was he God? Definitely not. Was he spirituality? I was too scared to get close. I was too scared to reply. I didn't know if he made it happen. Was it him? Do I respond, lol? I went to the hospital 3 days later, after Germany. My headmaster drove me.
On the way, we talked about Roskilde Festival. At the time, I was persistent on pretending I was fine, so I could go to the music festival for 2 weeks like all of my other friends. I abruptly gained 30 pounds in boarding school, and with those pounds, I was still raped. I abruptly lost 60 pounds after I was raped. I was sent home for medical leave for a week as my school determined my account for expulsion. Never trust institutions, but I got to go to the festival.
Success. I convinced my family I was fine. They left to Sweden to let me cry alone. I remember I got to have my boyfriend stay over for the first time ever. Success. I convinced my family I was fine. They left to Sweden to let me cry alone. I remember I got to have my boyfriend over for the first time ever in Esbjerg. He was 22 or 23. His name was Seb, and I was deeply in love. He asked me about Germany. After we had sex, he could tell something was different. I was scared when he said he could tell. I was wondering what he could tell. He said he could tell I had learned a few new tricks, and was excited about the potential aggression in the bedroom with my new skills acquired from being gang raped. This made me sad to see his joy at my sexual exploration that didn't happen. There was 7 boys, 3 boys, maybe 4 boys, and definitely 1 girl. That girl was the girlfriend of one of the guys. I can never figure out what she was doing there watching me get raped outside in a park. She was screaming him on. I couldn't understand her German, but it was very clear. Then I wore heels and a neon green bodycon dress. I will never wear a dress like that again. My dad still asks me what I wore. From the front, the H&M dress zipped all the way down.
Back in Denmark, I stole 4 crates of beer. I got in serious trouble. I jumped out 2 second-floor story windows because it wasn't risky then. I climbed to have sex on top of the school's crane, the crane that built the science building, the building from which I received my formal letter of expulsion. I jumped out of lots more windows. It wasn't so dangerous because windows in Denmark were low to the ground. I did a lot of clubbing in Copenhagen and snuck back every weekend. I bought a lot more vodka as cleaning supplies, which definitely looked suspicious to my grandparents, who were convinced I was an alcoholic and troubled girl. My favorite art teacher was pregnant, and she wasn't around to see me at my worst. I remember my boyfriend's ex at the time still went to the school. She kept dropping out of high school and coming back. She was blonde, with lots of blonde extensions. I learned to hate girls with blonde extensions and lots of mascara, especially those that had birth control implanted in their arms. After Germany, I learned that not all blondes with fake hair are bad, because my host sister was great. I also learned to never get off birth control. Birth control saved my life. The boys who raped me wore condoms. This was a smart choice, which made it harder to make a formal case. But what if the condom broke? And I did get pregnant. I remember my mom over the phone told me that the statistics for black women to get AIDS was higher than any other race. I felt dirty. My German sister knew intuitively what had happened, and publicly shamed him at school, supposedly enough for him to bully me on Facebook for lying about being raped and ruining his reputation. I never deleted that message. It took me 3 months to first get the courage to open it. My friend Helen and Caroline, were the only people I told with half-truths. I never said the word rape. I remember this bro dude we partied with, who had said his mom was a nurse. I remember saying I needed to see her when back at Denmark at a party, with tears running down my cheeks. I was that ashamed. My close friend at the time, Simone, who I was in love with, got raped the week after I did. Everyone knew about that one. I didn't, and we didn't talk for years to come. It was dumb. We could have shared our pains.
The German school already hated our school. They were elitist, and as our school was elitist, this one won first place. Danes had given the reputation of being bad with their liquor, and they were prejudicial to all Danes arriving for MUN. I didn't know this before I was raped. I didn't know this until I was raped. From afar, I saw an argument happen between two professors still on the yacht, who couldn't see me in the bushes on my back screaming. They were arguing over students entering without being invited to the party. I fucked up big time and let the guy who raped me on the boat. I saw him as I was online, him and his friends, and I gestured for him to come up under the rope and skip the line with me. We made out the entire time. I left my friends. I shouldn't have. He said we'd go get a bite somewhere. I'm not sure what I was thinking. It wasn't my fault. I try to remember.
I made a lot of bad decisions. I made more bad decisions when I got back to Denmark. I skipped class to smoke weed with my dealer. The drug lords at the town went around on motorcycles that were more like scooters, but they'd give a big honk when they were outside, and I'd grab my things and swing my bag over my shoulder in clear daylight, leaving Maths on the back of his scooter. My parents were wrong to think a small town means no trouble. One of my best friends at the time, Lan, a diplomat's daughter from Singapore, got addicted to amph. I didn't know you could get addicted to amph. Amph was amphetamine, I now know. Lan had to leave school. It was very sad. She got out at a great time, to be honest, before all the suspensions and deaths. The boys broke into a shop and stole a refrigerator. I was there to tell them to put it back. But then there was all this broken glass. I was really angry at them, or that, because I knew the restaurant was a little shawarma place. I knew they were immigrants struggling to make a living, and I knew this would be economically cost the business. I made them return it at 4 a.m. while barefoot. I was like their mother, but also a small child. I took amph almost every night to go out and party at Bastian's, the only nightclub in Nyborg. The next town, Odense, had some good bars and way better China box.
All I found was trouble. I was the trouble. The drug lords did stupid things like watch porn all day and listen to EDM really loud while rolling us lines. They paid for our taxis and I became best friends with Jimmy. He had some condition that made him mentally about 8 years old in the brain, which I liked because I felt comfortable to trust, and he never felt sexual feelings around me. Jimmy always helped to take the pain away. He gave me an unlimited supply of free drugs. Whatever I wanted, I could have. Best of all, he was always available and always had time. He got an enormous amount of money from the state for disability, and he didn't know what to do with it, so he thought it was best to share it with us. His eyes were both crossed permanently, so I could never tell where he was looking. He never showered. We tried to get him to shower, but it was tough. We had to watch him around fire because he always tried to put it out with his fingers. I remember pulling him away from very many candlesticks. We went out together every day. He visited the boarding school and learned how to sneak in from the bike storage room in the basement. He helped us dispose of bottles. We weren't allowed to carry glass bottles in the hallway, meaning we couldn't recycle bottles. Jimmy had an English accent and was always with a dripping nose. He'd always chuckle, laughing, and no one ever got to know what he was laughing about. He showed me cigarettes, and I learned about Dowdy, that they can push the tears back. When I needed to push the tears back, I did that. My school was very stressful academically, and I thought I was seriously stupid. I was failing for many reasons. One, because I couldn't understand the website layout, because I pretended at the time to fully be able to read in Danish while I couldn't. So I didn't know we had to submit our assignments online digitally. That included math homework. We had to scan them and upload them before midnight deadline. I remember thinking the math my Spanish teacher was teaching was in Russian because of her thick accent, and because she made letters numbers and numbers letters. Her handwriting sucked, and I couldn't stop looking out the window and swiveling my chair up and down to different levels until she told me I was a distraction. And I'd leave to the hallways. We always had smoke breaks during each class period, which made life bearable. Kids would drug each other with sleeping pills to get an advantage over the other in grading. It was usually in the form of U.S. sleeping pills acquired or something else unexpected to make you sleep mid-exam. It was a regular thing, and we were always expecting it from particular students in history class. We all smoked. It didn't for the first half of the year, and I even made a YouTube video of anti-smoking, like the real nerd I am. I didn't know that YouTube was public, so I posted it public, and it went viral. I remember hating hearing my own voice as I showed my theory of knowledge class, my final assignment, critiquing smoking culture. It's still up on the web. I didn't know SoundCloud was for music either. In English, we use SoundCloud to upload our speeches, essays read aloud, and analysis of King Lear with another partner. I was paired with Alex. This speech is still online, public on the web, and extremely boring to listen to. Kind of like how my cousins made us watch C-SPAN to go to bed, to sleep to. I always never knew internet memes existed, or the internet existed outside of project searching. I had no clue until that year, all the possibilities, all the pop-ups.
I pretended to be blackout when re-narrating this for my grandparents, and I lied to the institution on the stand. I didn't go to court because it was an international affair, and I was persuaded not to. Seb and I had a great weekend pretending to be full adults living together in Espeguer. For the first time, he did things for me other than collect the pent for change to go to Christiania. I remember when he left, we both cried, our tears touching cheeks. That was the first time I saw him show he loved me. He was heading back to UK to visit the uni he goes to now, Edinburgh University. I'm not sure how he got in, because I always did his assignments and reread his writing, and his writing was crap. That summer we went to Christiania, but in separate camps. I got chlamydia, as my 23-year-old boyfriend cheated on me with other girls at the festival. A week later I was home in New York taking antibiotics. My mom knew. My mom wanted me back home because she said a 17-year-old shouldn't have an apartment in Copenhagen and be an adult too fast with her boyfriend, who she didn't even know his address or phone number or middle name by heart. In my defense, his middle name sucked, and our address I couldn't pronounce. I don't have time to process my trauma, so I slept a lot too at the festival. I was on a lot of ecstasy, and I think my friend Alex gave them to me. He'd always search YouTube for the harms cigarettes would do and make fun of me then as a smoker, him not, that we would all die. And a year later, at the next festival, the next summer, he sold us hard drugs. After the first festival, when I was raped and got a lot of sympathy, my friends wrote letters to the headmaster and dean in both Danish and English to persuade the committee on my behalf. I was a stellar student. I got terrible grades, but I coded the Institute's entire website before I knew coding was something you were paid for. I was head of the photography club, head of yearbook, made, produced, and distributed the school's first yearbook. I was the head journalist of MUN, and made the social media profiles and formal site updating everyone hour by hour during international MUN visits. I met the Crown Princess during MUN. Oh no, I didn't. I wish I had my friend Karen got to. The Crown Princess, for so longer, was my biggest idol. In Denmark, there were this magazines similar to our celebrity magazines that are solely devoted to stalking the royal family of Denmark, which I bought often for the lip gloss it came with. The magazines were everywhere, just like the porn magazines with the breasts on the front. I'm trying to remember the name. I remember my boyfriend Seb subscribed to them and had their calendar in the kitchen. I remember feeling insecure about my body because of that. A trait that carried over years later into a different relationship with a guy who made art idealizing pin-up models. And I broke up with him because I couldn't stand his art, and how he made me feel about the expectation for my body to always be smaller than his.
When my school was determining if I should get expelled for being raped, at the same time I was juxtaposedly their stellar representative of their ideal student. I was a dual citizen and excelling socially. I was determined in my classes even though I was struggling academically. What I later found out was that many of my classes, while pretending to be in English, were not, and often in Danish. I took biology a higher level in fucking Danish and thought I was dumb for not understanding her every word, but my bilingual ass couldn't distinguish the accessibility my school was. And Denmark's inability acknowledging disability was real. I thought it had to mean I had a lack of knowledge comparative to my diplomatic peers. I was on the cover of the boarding school's pamphlet, surely providing a diverse modification of truth. I also translated their website and got zero compensation. I was really a hyper kid who was very energetic. A girl on my hall in boarding school once told me in a snobby voice that she wished I would be put on Adderall so I could stop bouncing off the walls. I didn't know what Adderall was then. I do not know I was given Adderall at a party in my drink. Mateo liked to drug us while we partied, not sure why. We had fun and were always in safe hands, our hands. I remember then, before I was raped at 17, that I definitely thought I was invincible, that I absolutely couldn't die. I found out mortality at 17. Then I took a shower 2 weeks later. Probably semen was still inside me. Even though I got swabbed, I wanted to keep evidence, or keep dirty somehow.
When I took a shower after the 2-week festival, my nose was still blowing out black snot from the dust. I got an immediate flu. It was my first flu. I couldn't walk for several days. Turns out I had been severely dehydrated, probably because of the 6 cases of beer I went through, and many, many more I should not share. Did I remember to mention I had an overdose on E during the Kendrick Lamar set? They pushed me and my body up and over the silver fences in front of the medics wearing bright orange. I left my cell phone with my friend as I felt it kick in too fast. I was already over the barrier of the fence. The medics were kneeling at my eye level, asking a lot of questions in many languages. I told them I prefer English. They put me on a stretcher and wrapped me in tinfoil. 4 humans carried my body over their heads as they weaved through the festival crowds. Everyone was awing, and because they knew that I could be them too. Everyone looked over the stretch to get a good look at my face and make sure I wasn't someone they recognized. The medics flashed lots of light in my eyes and made me stay awake. They said I should sleep and must sweat it out. The foil around my body was to keep me warm, they said. I was cold. I wasn't wearing much. They tried to get me to eat and drink. They forced me to drink after the first hour. I was in a white medic tent with hundreds of other festival attendees, all brain-fried too. I remember meeting a guy that was on a stretcher next to me, who was far off worse than me. He made me feel better. He told me all about his trip, breaking his arm, losing his phone, and that it all gets better once your friends find you. He was soothing. I told the medics my real information, my real name. I'm not sure why. I can't listen to that Kendrick Lamar album anymore. After 9 hours, it was still dark outside, a darker dark of night. I was disoriented, so one of the doctors walked me out of the medics area, back into the campsite, to find my camp and friends. Once I recognized the site, I was let loose on my own. Also, the weather dropped like my dad said it would. I didn't get the text until weeks later. I was using a Nokia phone for the festival. My friends had just arrived back home after the Kendrick Lamar concert, still on uppers. They said they'd been searching all over for hours for me. It was true. They gave me my phone. They asked if it was okay and wanted a beer. I remember they tried to gag me in the medics, but I couldn't forcibly vomit. I went back to playing beer bowling and slept with another guy that night. That turned morning, that turned night, riding around on the roof of a caravan, dancing with friends covered in paint, and lifted up by what I saw wasn't a van, but was a car without wheels carried by men. Lots of risen movements and riding around. What's the drug that starts with a P? You smoke it, and then it's pretty? That one. That year I worked as volunteer to afford the festival along with 3 other of my friends. I stayed an extended time at the festival, a day longer than everyone else, making it a full 2 weeks without shower, normal food, sitting, and porta-potty hygienic standards. Towards the end, you just use the open fields. The last day is the worst for women, supposedly. The last night was the funnest. It's dangerous for everyone, honestly. It becomes like Burning Man. Everything's destroyed and broke and set on fire. I remember that year we had a record amount of wasted camping gear trashed. The helicopter images of campsites and abandoned tents, and food, pots, condoms, cigarettes, smashed beers, toilet paper, all of it was well documented. Supposedly the festival donates the goods for the homeless, but it was visibly millions of dollars to waste. It was great working that last day, because my job was easy. I had to push a button, working at the recycling center for a machine, to crush and compress cardboard boxes. I was outside for 6 hours, and got really ill. My friend found me passed out. I forgot to bring beer for the spirits. The last day is great for scavengers like me, because you get to refurnish your entire apartment with cool things. We got a guitar, and amp, several tents, mattresses, lights, rain boots, and I even lost a pair of Chucks and found another pair in the same size, just a different color. I remember in that first shower after the 2 weeks, I couldn't stand. In Denmark, most people don't have bathtubs in modernized bathrooms because water's too expensive, and the limit water makes it too difficult to clean. He told me I freeze if I go outside. He told me I'd freeze to death if I drank. He told me it was my fault when I got raped. I didn't freeze to death or die. It wasn't that cold. I get scared sometimes I'll bump into the face I forgot on the street. Living in New York, the likelihood is greater to always bump into someone you don't want to. I forgot he raped me. I forget it happens on purpose. Don't come too close. I may never let you come close. I'm too good at letting you get close. You're already inside. Permission taken. I forget. 3 years later, Wesley, the guy who predicted my rape, messaged me over Facebook to ask if I'd like to join him on an all-paid trip to New Orleans. Little did I know, the paid-for bit was him wasting away his money that his mother had put aside for him to finish college on me. He told me he was married with a wife, but it was all suspicious. I went to New Orleans because I suppose I'm a risk taker. I had no idea where he lived, and we met at the airport. He always spooked me, and I went along just to see how it'd go. My parents were livid. I technically left for New Orleans entirely without giving word that I'd be traveling, the week before I was set to go to college. I disappeared in their eyes, gone without a trace. I packed a bag and planned out the vegan restaurants we'd go to. The trip we had more happens take place. I truly believe he has some sort of power to bring up into terribly dangerous situations. We went to what's called the Tree House in New Orleans, where travelers and abandoned kids stay and party. It was this lavish tree house with intricate bridges and a whole upper-level city carved out of a tree supporting several floor levels. There were lots of fish tanks in the tree trunk, making it glow. We met many kids tripping, and got readings, and predicted us unwelcome, and someone also took our life after determining us good for dead. Where we were, supposedly cabs don't go, because it was the bad part of town. We were lucky. At the next gas station we found an off-duty cab, and Wesley used his manipulative skills to get us a ride back to the hotel. The hotel itself was haunted. No one was ever in the lobby, and we were convinced the elevators had ghosts. They'd randomly open and close at our hall, and no other guests were checked in. We saw 0 attendance beyond paying the first night of the week. I can remember the lighting. It was dramatic lighting, with a long red velvet rug to welcome us in. The doors looked locked, but weren't. The lobby was empty. It was great. It was grandiose and made of marble. The building was tall and purple. I'm not sure how he had the money, and I definitely didn't ask questions. I let him tell me lies. I loved listening to the stories he made up. I could tell his lying face similar to my dad's and my brother's. I had assumed all men can make this smirk, an inquisitive smirk that shows you a shared knowledge of knowing that both are in on the game, that they're intellectually outsmarting you. Now I don't eat. Memories come and go like waves.